November 1966. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. A bitter wind whipped through the empty streets. The town lay quiet, too quiet for a place once bustling with life. But that night, something stirred near the abandoned weapons depot. A presence that made the hair on the back of the neck stand on end. Guards reported a figure unlike anything they had ever seen. Towering, silent wings stretching into the darkness. Eyes glowed red, piercing through the fog. And then, it vanished, as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. The news spread slowly at first. Whispers in diners, hushed conversations on porches, anxious glances down darkened alleys. Locals spoke of strange lights dancing above the Ohio River. Unexplained sounds echoing through the tree line. A sense that the town was being watched. Children refused to play outside after dusk, and even adults hesitated near the depot. There was fear palpable and thick, as though the night itself held its breath. Official reports were cold, sterile. One line scribbled on a military form, unidentified aerial phenomena observed. Sightings inconclusive. Yet diaries, personal notes, and letters painted a different picture. One officer wrote, "It hovered, silent, observing, and then disappeared, leaving only dread in its wake." Another reported instruments going haywire, compasses spinning, radios crackling with static, the very air charged with something unnatural. Rumors began to swell. The locals spoke of a winged sentinel, a creature older than memory. Some claimed it was a harbinger of doom. Others whispered that it was the restless spirit of soldiers long gone watching over the depot where weapons of war once slept. Pets, vanished livestock found mutilated, and a young man chasing the glowing eyes into the forest never returned. Each tale adding to the growing legend, each sighting blurring the line between fact and folklore. Newspapers printed sensational accounts. Mysterious flying man near weapons depot. Headlines screamed, witnesses trembled, fear spread like wildfire. The shadow behind the abandoned depot was no longer just a story. It had a presence, a weight, a memory. And it lingered waiting, patient, ancient, watching from the tree line, unseen but never absent. Point Pleasant, a quiet river town tucked along the Ohio River. November winds tore through the streets, rattling shutters and carrying the scent of wet earth. The town's folk went about their evening routines, but an unease hung heavy. Something unspoken, something felt, lurking just beyond the light. The depot loomed on the outskirts. Once a hub of wartime activity, now abandoned, its chain-link fences, rusted buildings sagging. The gates creaked in the wind. A hollow sound that seemed alive, as if the place itself remembered the chaos of weapons and soldiers long gone. Residents had long told stories about strange happenings near the depot. Lights in the tree line, shadows flitting across foggy grounds, the faint echo of footsteps when no one was there. Whispers of figures hovering, eyes glowing in the night. Tales passed quietly from neighbor to neighbor, often dismissed, yet always persistent. One farmer reported livestock found mutilated, precise unnatural marks, no signs of struggle, footprints too large and heavy to belong to any known creature. They led to the edge of the woods, and then vanished into mist, leaving behind questions that no one could answer. Military files, when examined years later, reveal nothing. Redacted pages, incomplete reports. One line, anomalous sightings reported. Personnel advised to maintain distance. That was all. Yet diaries tell another story. A young guard wrote, "I saw it hover, silent, watching, then gone before I could reach it. Dread clinging to my bones." Children began to whisper. Nightmares of a winged figure haunting the outskirts. waking, screaming, their accounts dismissed as imagination. Yet mothers and fathers shared uneasy glances, knowing something had shifted in the night. Something not human, something patient. The Ohio River itself seemed to reflect these strange happenings. Ripples disturbed when no wind blew, faint glimmers of light floating on the water's surface, shadows dancing where no tree or building could cast them. The town felt a subtle pressure, a constant observation, as if the night itself had eyes. One evening, a local teenager claimed to have chased a glowing figure into the woods, never returned. Search parties found only footprints, deep, wide, vanishing mid-path, leaves disturbed, but no body. The forest seemed to swallow him whole, leaving Point Pleasant with a singular disappearance, a fate unknown. Beyond the depot, towns in Kentucky and Ohio reported similar sightings, strange figures near deserted military structures, lights that moved against the wind, patterns emerging, as if whatever haunted the depot had no regard for borders, a restless force following the echoes of war, moving silently through the abandoned grounds. Locals spoke of spirits from past conflicts, soldiers who had died with unfinished business, guardians or watchers. Yet others feared something far older, a creature born of shadow, feeding on fear, moving in tandem with human history, crossing time and space to manifest near remnants of war. Even animals reacted, dogs barking at nothing, cats refusing to enter the woods, livestock restless, uneasy, fleeing when the wind shifted, the natural order disrupted, hinting at an unseen presence that influenced all life around the depot, a subtle terror that bled into everyday existence. The townsfolk began to notice changes in behavior. Adults avoiding the depot after dusk, groups walking in pairs, children kept indoors, families whispering prayers, folk remedies scattered at doorways, talismans hung to ward off spirits, a quiet acknowledgement that the world had shifted. The line between reality and legend blurred. News reports chronicled some sightings. Journalists described a flying man over the depot, red eyes glowing in the night. Readers dismissed it as sensational. Yet first-hand accounts persisted. Officers, guards, and farmers all telling similar stories. The echo of fear consistent, undeniable, impossible to ignore. Night after night, shadows moved. Shapes hovered just out of reach. The wind carried voices, faint, distorted, indecipherable murmurs. Instruments malfunctioned. Radios crackled. Compasses spun. The depot had become a nexus, a crossroads of fact and folklore, of history and legend. By the end of November, Point Pleasant was changed. A town aware that it was being observed. A community learning to live with uncertainty. With the idea that beyond the tree line, beyond the gates of the depot, something waited, something patient, something that would not be explained, not fully, not ever. Official records from November 1966 offer a chilling glimpse. A sequence of reports dry clinical yet hinting at unease. The local sheriff's office logged several sightings near the abandoned depot. Descriptions consistent yet baffling. Tall, humanoid figure, wings folded against its back, eyes glowing crimson, silent. It moved with a grace no human could replicate. Instruments in the vicinity malfunctioned. Radios crackled with static. Compasses spun uncontrollably. One officer wrote, "It defies reason, cannot be explained. We saw it." And then it vanished. Newspaper clippings from that month speak of multiple witnesses, farmers, shopkeepers, even children, all recounting the same phenomenon. Lights in the tree line, sudden gusts of wind with no source, strange footprints appearing and disappearing, livestock found dead under mysterious circumstances, mutilated in ways that defied animal predation. One report notes tracks lead into the swamp and vanish. The land itself seems to reject explanation. Personal diaries provide further insight. A young guard detailed patrols near the perimeter. I walked alone. Mist rising from the ground. Something watched me. Eyes glowing. Wings outstretched. I froze. Then it was gone, leaving only dread behind. Another entry mentions an entire unit witnessing a shadow flit across the depot roof. They fired shots. Nothing hit. The figure disappeared before anyone could approach, a fear that lingered long after. Military correspondence remained cryptic, most pages heavily redacted. One memo reads, "Personnel advised to maintain distance. Unusual activity continues. Do not engage." The terse language reveals both concern and confusion, a reluctance to fully describe what was occurring, as if acknowledging it aloud made it more real, more dangerous. Local newspapers in both West Virginia and neighboring Kentucky documented these sightings. Headlines sensational yet consistent. Mysterious flying man seen near weapons depot. Red-eyed shadow haunts forest edge. Journalists interviewed multiple eyewitnesses. Statements nearly identical, though some dismissed them as mass hysteria. Fear, however, was palpable and real. The physical evidence, though sparse, adds to the terror. Footprints 3 feet long, 6 inches wide. Impressions deep in mud. Some scorched, some filled with water. None matching known creatures. Some ending abruptly, as if the earth itself had swallowed them. Other traces included torn branches, disturbed foliage, even feathers unlike any bird in the region. Metallic iridescent, reflecting the moonlight unnaturally. Military patrols reported instruments going haywire. Geiger counters spiked without radiation present. Thermometers fluctuated wildly. Radios emitted low-frequency hums. Night vision scopes detected movement yet saw nothing tangible. Logs read like science fiction, yet corroborated across multiple personnel. A consistent pattern, impossible to dismiss. Eyewitness statements grew more desperate. One family described their barn door opening in the middle of the night, livestock missing, their dog cowering, and then a glowing figure perched atop the silo. Wings spread, before it vanished into the fog. They later found footprints fading into the cornfield, ending in mud, leaving them questioning reality. Medical reports, oddly enough, note increased heart rates, sudden fainting, and reports of panic attacks among those who encountered the entity. Even experienced officers admitted sleepless nights, nightmares. Fear etched deep into their psyche. Not just folklore, but documented physiological reaction. The terror was real, palpable, enduring. Law enforcement files include a note on one particularly chilling incident. A patrolman claims the figure watched from the tree line for hours, waiting, studying, then lifted into the sky silently, as though judging our intrusion. Colleagues corroborated his shaken state, but no one could explain what they had seen. The logs ended with the phrase, "Fate unknown," further observation required. Artifacts collected were minimal, feathers, footprints, and disturbed earth, yet samples sent for analysis were inconclusive. No known animal matched the description. No environmental anomaly accounted for the sightings. The absence of proof paradoxically reinforced the legend. The more they searched, the less they found, except fear, everywhere. The consistency of witness accounts is striking. Multiple families, soldiers, and town residents report similar descriptions. Glowing red eyes, towering humanoid shape, massive wings, silent flight, yet always fleeting, always just beyond reach. A pattern suggesting intelligence, perhaps intent, a consciousness observing. choosing when to appear. Even years later, historical records emphasize the persistence of these events. Reports not isolated, occurrences repeated across weeks, months. Similar patterns in other depots, other abandoned military sites, suggesting a connection, a motif, something drawn to abandoned weaponry, perhaps a shadow left over from wartime, or something far older, something patient, watching, waiting. Fact and folklore begin to intertwine here. Witness accounts, diaries, newspapers, official logs, all converge on the same terrifying possibility that what haunted Point Pleasant was not mere imagination, not merely a tale told to frighten children. It was something real, something that left traces, that manipulated the physical world and lingered in memory, ready to emerge again at any moment. By the end of November, the stories of Point Pleasant had begun to transcend mere eyewitness reports. They entered the realm of folklore, whispered in diners, at church gatherings, over fences, and in schoolyards. Tales of the Mothman, a winged sentinel, a harbinger of doom, a shadow with eyes that glowed like molten rubies. Elders recalled their own childhoods, recounting encounters with strange lights over the Ohio River, with shapes moving against the wind, creatures appearing and disappearing in the mist. They spoke of spirits, restless souls of soldiers who had perished in nearby conflicts, guardians of the abandoned depot, or perhaps something far older, a force older than memory, that observed human folly with patient disdain. Local legend merged with fact. Every sighting became a story retold, slightly altered, gaining weight with each telling. Children who saw the figure would describe nightmares, wings spreading, eyes burning, a presence that filled the room long after they awoke. Their parents whispered prayers, crossed their thresholds with charms, yet none dared speak too loudly, for fear it might hear and respond. The press, both regional and national, reported sightings. Flying man spotted over depot, red-eyed figure haunts tree line. Readers laughed, dismissed it as hysteria. But the consistency of accounts could not be ignored. Townsfolk insisted. No single person had invented these experiences. The fear was shared, collective, undeniable. Even the geography seemed complicit. The Ohio River's bends reflected lights in impossible ways. The forest edges created illusions that seemed alive. Fog rolled in thick waves, hiding shapes that emerged only at the periphery of vision, creating the impression that the town was being watched, monitored, judged. Some spoke of omens, strange animal behavior, unexplained gusts, sudden cold spots. One account tells of a hound freezing mid-step, growling at nothing, eyes wide, as a shadow passed overhead. Birds fell silent. An unnatural quiet descended. The night itself seemed aware, a participant in the unfolding legend. Stories told of the Mothman's intelligence. It did not merely flit about. It appeared to observe, to judge, to anticipate. Footprints that vanished into thin air, movements too precise, glances that unnerved even seasoned officers. A creature not just of myth, but of presence, a conscious observer in the darkness. Children's drawings depicted the creature. Wings, massive eyes, terrifyingly red, limbs impossibly long, murals painted in chalk on sidewalks. Each image echoed the accounts of adults, a collective memory, a shared terror, an imprint of the unknown on the town's psyche. Some locals claimed premonitions, dreams of disaster, visions of the bridge collapse months later. People spoke of warnings from the winged figure, that the Mothman was a messenger, a harbinger of calamity. The folklore was no longer harmless. It carried weight. It demanded attention. The Ohio River became central to the tales. At night, lights glimmered across the water, floating shapes reflected in the mist. Whispers spoke of a guardian or a predator. Watching the town's every move, villagers claimed they could sense its presence long before it appeared. A chill down the spine, a hair standing on end, a feeling of being observed. Even those who had not seen the figure felt its influence. Unexplained sounds in the forest, objects moving with no touch, doors opening, windows rattling, an omnipresent shadow lingering in corners, stories of vanished livestock, pets, and even humans. Each disappearance wrapped in mystery, each event feeding the myth. Local historians later compiled accounts, blending eyewitness reports with folklore. The distinction blurred. Newspapers, diaries, interviews, and oral traditions painted a tapestry. A town caught between history and myth, where every shadow could hold meaning, and every red glow in the dark suggested a presence beyond comprehension. Some elders recalled that the Mothman's appearances coincided with wartime relics, abandoned depots, old munitions sites, structures heavy with history and latent energy. Perhaps the creature was drawn to these places, a sentinel of past conflicts, or a collector of fear, a being that existed at the intersection of human memory and the unknown. Even the skeptics began to whisper. Something inexplicable persisted. Instruments failed, compasses spun, dogs cowered, and the figure appeared, consistently, repeatedly. Evidence not in the form of proof, but in the resonance of experience. A haunting that refused to be ignored. By weaving these stories together, fact layer met folklore layer. Eyewitness accounts merged with whispered tales, each amplifying the other, creating a narrative that was more than history, more than legend. It was a living, breathing tension, a pulse felt in every shadow, in every gust of wind, in every reflection along the river. The Mothman had become part of the town, inseparable, inevitable. As December settled over Point Pleasant, the town began to feel smaller, constricted, as if the very night had closed in around them. Reports of sightings near the depot did not diminish. They spread, traveled beyond the Ohio River. Whispers reaching nearby towns, Kentucky, Ohio, even as far as Pennsylvania. The motif of the Mothman began to appear elsewhere. Shadowed figures near abandoned military sites, lights hovering over tree lines, people describing glowing eyes, silent, watching, waiting. A pattern emerged, and it could not be ignored. The bridge, Silver Bridge, looming over the river, became a central point in the growing lore. Locals recalled seeing the creature circling above. Some swore it was a warning, a premonition. Eyes burning red in the darkness, the shadow moving with intent, tracing the contours of the steel and stone. Its presence a silent proclamation, something that connected past and future, fact and folklore. In nearby counties, other reports surfaced. Hunters, farmers, even law enforcement officers described similar phenomena. Strange lights, elongated shadows, footprints vanishing into the mud, radios and compasses malfunctioning, the same pattern repeating, suggesting a consciousness, a force drawn to abandoned war relics, a sentinel of history, or a messenger of something darker. Town meetings were held. Fear mingled with fascination. Residents debated what could explain the occurrences. Rational explanations fell short. Optics, animals, hallucinations. None accounted for the precision, the consistency, the shared experience. Families began taking precautions. Children brought inside. Doors barred. Charms and talismans placed on thresholds. a quiet acknowledgement that the ordinary world had shifted. Even journalists noted the connection. Headlines no longer dismissed the sightings as hysteria. They began to hint at patterns. Flying man seen near multiple military sites. Red-eyed shadow appears across counties. Yet the public remained divided. Some laughed. Others whispered prayers. The town itself seemed to teeter between disbelief and terror. Eyewitnesses reported feeling observed even outside the depot. Glances over their shoulders. Fleeting shadows in the fog. The sensation that the creature or its kin watched from afar. A presence that followed, waiting for opportunity, testing boundaries. A motif of patient surveillance, recurring across miles, across towns, across abandoned remnants of history. Families spoke of premonitions, dreams of disaster, visions of accidents, floods, and collapse. The bridge again appeared in these dreams, glowing eyes circling above, a silent warning repeated in the subconscious. Locals began to connect the dots. The Mothman was more than a creature of flesh and wing. It was a messenger, a pattern, a shadow following the echoes of human conflict. Military personnel stationed nearby reported anomalies beyond sightings. Communications scrambled, instruments registering false readings, thermometers spiking, all coinciding with reports of the winged figure. A motif of interference, a signature of presence, suggesting intelligence and intent, something aware of observation, responding selectively, purposefully. The town became a network of observation. Neighbors watched tree lines, farmers patrolled fields at night, lights swept across woods and rivers. Each sighting corroborated the others. The bridge, the depot, the tree lines, all became nodes in a web of mystery, connecting fact to folklore, a shared consciousness of fear, a collective memory of shadow. Even skeptics felt the bridge between legend and reality. Instruments malfunctioned in their hands. Dogs refused to cross certain roads. Cats stared into empty spaces. Birds fell silent in flight. The natural world seemed to respond, bending to the presence, acknowledging an intelligence beyond human comprehension. Rumors of previous wartime activity fueled speculation. Abandoned munitions, training grounds, a history of conflict, death, energy lingering in the land. Perhaps the creature was drawn to these sites, a guardian, a remnant, a sentinel born of fear and history, a motif repeated, haunting, watching, linking past to present. The townsfolk began leaving marks, notes in trees, chalk on walls, symbols to ward off the shadow, warnings to others, a primitive language of survival, echoing legends of guardians, watchers, and harbingers, a bridge connecting tangible reality to mythic imagination. Fact layer and folklore, layer entwined. Even the river seemed to participate, reflections of lights that should not exist, ripples where no wind blew, shadows moving under the fog, motifs repeated across water and land, linking towns, bridges, forests, a network of mystery, threaded through geography and memory. And so the Mothman became more than a creature. It became a presence, a recurring pattern, a motif echoing through November and December of 1966, connecting sightings, disappearances, dreams, and warnings, a bridge between history and legend, between fear and fascination, between the known and the unknowable. December 19... The nights in Point Pleasant grew colder, the fog heavier. The town felt like it was holding its breath. Each street lamp flickered as if hesitant. Shadows stretched long across deserted roads, and every tree line seemed to shift when observed. Guards patrolling the depot perimeter spoke of something unnatural, something patient, watching. One night, a patrol team approached the depot after reports of glowing lights. The mist hung low, dew forming on grass and metal. Suddenly, a shape emerged from the tree line. Massive wings unfurled, spanning wider than any bird they had ever seen, eyes burning red, reflecting the pale moonlight. It tilted its head, considered them, and vanished before any action could be taken, leaving only an eerie silence and the imprint of footprints disappearing mid-mud. A local farmer awoke to strange sounds, low rustling in the barnyard. His animals terrified, chickens scattered, a horse rearing in panic. He peered through the window, saw a figure perched atop the silo, wings stretching into the fog. It stared, unblinking. He raised a shotgun, fired. Nothing touched it. The creature tilted, shifted, then ascended silently into the mist. The only evidence, deep footprints in the frozen earth, fading to nothing. In a nearby field, another sighting occurred. A group of teenagers walking home from a late-night gathering. Laughter died on their lips as a shadow crossed their path. No wind, no sound. Yet the trees themselves seemed to part, forming a corridor for the glowing figure. They froze. One whispered, "It's watching us." And it was, tilting, hovering, wings twitching like a predator assessing prey, then gone, leaving panic in its wake. Military logs recount patrols where instruments failed, radios crackled incoherently, compasses spun, thermometers fluctuated wildly. Officers documented these anomalies, writing personnel report sightings. Cannot explain. Instruments malfunctioning. Fear mounting. Even trained soldiers admitted to dread. An inexplicable physical sensation of being observed. Something ancient. Something intelligent. A particularly chilling account comes from a bridge watch. Silver Bridge. Residents and guards reported the figure circling high above the steel. Wings slicing the fog. Eyes glowing. One observer noted a feeling of judgment, as if the creature was measuring the town's actions, waiting, calculating, a sentinel of warning or doom. Pets and livestock reacted unpredictably. Dogs barking at empty corners, cats hissing at shadows, horses refusing to cross open fields. One dog disappeared entirely, only paw prints leading to the riverbank. The natural world itself seemed to recognize the presence, bending to it, acknowledging it, fearing it. Eyewitnesses described the creature's intelligence. It did not merely flit about. It followed it, observed it, seemed to anticipate movements. Vehicles on patrol, townsfolk walking home. It appeared, disappeared, reappeared. A pattern suggesting awareness, intent. A consciousness watching from beyond understanding. In one diary, a young guard wrote, "It hovered above the tree line, eyes piercing. I could not move, could not speak. Then it vanished, leaving the instruments dead. My pulse racing. The fear realer than anything I have known." Multiple accounts corroborated, each report adding depth, detail, consistency, impossible to dismiss. Newspaper archives chronicled sightings. Red-eyed flying man terrorizes depot. Shadow haunts tree line, multiple witnesses. Sensational to some, horrifyingly consistent to others. Officers and civilians alike reporting the same phenomena. Glowing eyes, silent flight wings stretching impossibly wide, and then vanishing, leaving fear and unanswered questions. Objects moved without touch, doors opening, windows rattling, chains swinging, radios buzzing, instruments dead, all coinciding with sightings. A signature of presence, deliberate, aware, intelligent. The depot itself became a stage, the town the audience, shadows and mist the actors, every night a performance, each more unnerving than the last. The bridge sightings escalated. Residents reported glowing eyes circling above, shapes shifting in the fog, tilting, observing, then disappearing. Dreams of disasters intertwined with sightings. The motif of warning became stronger. The creature more than legend, a messenger, a sentinel, a force connecting history, geography, and fear. As the month wore on, sightings and reports intensified. The town watched, guarded, fearful. Each shadow potentially the figure. Each rustle in the trees a signal. The Mothman had become inseparable from the town's consciousness, a living, breathing tension, something that could not be ignored. By the end of December, Point Pleasant was transformed. A town on edge, a community intertwined with legend. Fact and folklore merged into reality. The presence was undeniable. It observed. It waited. Silent. Patient. Above rooftops. In tree lines. Near the river. The Mothman was no longer just a story. It was a sentinel. A warning. A shadow that would not be forgotten. By the turn of the year, Point Pleasant was forever changed. Streets quieter at night, tree lines more menacing, every fog-shrouded corner carrying the possibility of unseen eyes. The depot still stood, silent, abandoned, yet alive, in memory, in whispers, in shadowed recollections of those who had seen. Locals could feel it, a lingering presence, in homes, in barns along the riverbanks. The Ohio River reflecting more than moonlight, glimmers of red, shapes that vanished when approached. The Mothman had left traces, not physical but emotional, a residue of fear, of fascination, of questions that would never fully be answered. Some people moved away, unable to cope with the uncertainty. Others stayed, drawn by the legend, compelled to witness, to measure the inexplicable. Some claimed they could sense the creature, in the rustle of leaves, in sudden cold drafts, in the shadows stretching just beyond lamplight, always just beyond comprehension. Memories became stories. Stories became warnings. Dreams of disaster intertwined with sightings. Every December, reflections of past events seemed to reappear. The bridge, the depot, the tree lines, recurring nodes of terror, connecting generations, weaving a motif of observation, patience, and inevitability. Visitors reported unusual sensations, hair standing on end, the feeling of being watched, whispers of eyes in the darkness, unseen wings brushing past imagination, instruments failing without cause, dogs refusing to enter certain fields, all echoes of what had occurred decades earlier. A resonance across time, a warning never fully understood. Even skeptics found themselves unsettled. Compasses spun, radios crackled, thermometers fluctuated, shadows appeared where none should exist, the air charged with tension, a reminder that some things cannot be explained, some presences cannot be rationalized, and some legends are real in ways we cannot measure. The folklore persisted. Tales of winged figures, glowing eyes, silent observers, interwoven with verified accounts. Photographs blurry yet haunting. Sketches drawn by children and adults alike. A collective memory. A tapestry of fear, fascination, and wonder. Bridging fact and legend, past and present. And yet for all the records, all the diaries, all the newspaper articles, the Mothman remained elusive, impossible to capture. No body, no definitive proof, only footprints fading into mist, glimpses in the corner of vision, the chilling certainty that something watches, waits, and remembers. The townsfolk spoke of lessons learned, vigilance, humility, the acceptance that some mysteries are beyond comprehension, some forces indifferent to human understanding, and some shadows, patient, enduring, immortal in memory. A caution whispered across generations. The bridge collapsed years later, a tragic reminder. Coincidences remembered, dreams recalled. Some swore the Mothman had appeared in the days leading up to it. A warning unheeded, a message incomprehensible, leaving the town to wonder what had been observed and what had been ignored. To this day, the depot stands, empty, silent, yet charged. Visitors report feeling watched, fleeting shadows, lights in the mist, a chill along the tree line, as if the story continues, as if the sentinel waits for the next observer, the next witness. What did they see? What did it mean? Was it a harbinger, a guardian, or a creature born of collective fear? Perhaps some questions are not meant to be answered. Perhaps some presences exist only to remind us that the unknown is patient, relentless, and always watching. You have just witnessed another chapter from Echoes of the Unknown, a story where fact meets folklore, where history bleeds into legend, and where shadows may linger long after the lights go out. If you wish to explore more, uncover more whispers from the past, subscribe and follow the trail. Even now, as the fog rolls across the Ohio River, as the trees sway in the night, as the wind carries whispers of wings, one cannot help but wonder, is it still out there, watching, waiting, patient, inevitable, unseen, yet always present?